So I wanted to do a video where I address some frequently asked questions that we get. Could be questions from candidates that we work with, could be questions from hiring businesses. Some go quite deep and quite elaborate answers. Some are just about kind of run-of-the-mill things that aren't immediately obvious to people if you're not involved in recruitment day by day. I've collated a list of lots of questions we get asked regularly, and I've thrown them all into an AI thingy-majig. Every time I type in next, I'm just going to get it to fire one of the questions at me at random. We'll do 5 now, maybe we'll do some others in the video another day. Okay, so here goes. How do we know you won't inflate candidate salary expectations to increase your own fee? So yeah, interesting one. So we get asked this by hiring businesses sometimes. It's perfectly understandable. As a lot of you may well know, our fee is often an agreed percentage of the candidate's remuneration package. So naturally you might assume that the higher we inflate a candidate's salary expectations, and the higher our fee is going to be. One thing that I would say, this might surprise people, is I've been working in recruitment for 13 years now. I was with one agency for 7 years and then running my own business since then. And I've actually never seen it. I think it's probably a bigger issue in the heads of hiring businesses than it is for recruiters. I don't think it actually occurs to recruiters that much to try and play this scam. The main reason for that is if we inflate a candidate's salary expectations by, I don't know, 5 or 10k or something like that, it actually makes, proportionately speaking, a very small difference to our fee, but there is a very high risk that it could derail the whole process because the client might just walk away, or they might ask the candidate direct and then it all comes out in the interview scenario anyway and backfires. So the actual risk versus reward, to my mind, is simply just not worth it. If we're speaking to an amazing candidate, we'd actually rather, when we get to the salary question, that they're within budget, because then we've got a higher chance of making a placement. You walk into the office of most recruitment businesses and you watch someone on the phone speaking to an amazing candidate. When they get to the salary question, you see them almost praying that the candidate's actually going to be within budget. We don't actually want to inflate candidate salary expectations. It gives us less chance of actually placing that person. I can only speak for myself and what I've seen. Obviously, ultimately, I've only ever worked in 2 places, but I can honestly say I've literally never seen it. On to the next one. If you put me forward as a candidate for a role, what information do you pass to the hiring business and what will you say about me? So, okay, so a question from the candidate's perspective now. So typically, if we were to submit you to a hiring business, they would get your CV. Sometimes we'll have worked with you on the CV to make sure it's hitting the right markers. If we've been asked for a cover letter, that will go as well, of course. And then we'll provide them with basic supplementary information. So this would be salary expectations, notice period, location, any other miscellaneous details that might be worth knowing. Now, in many cases, we might have also gone through with you some deeper vetting questions that we've agreed with the hiring business. They might be questions that delve deeper into certain experiences you have, certain personality traits, certain characteristics, etc. So typically, along with submitting the CV, we would provide the hiring business with a note summary of how you've answered those questions. To dispel one common myth, we're not putting you forward and then selling you to the hiring business. We're not saying this candidate's amazing because of X, Y, and Z. I really just see it as my job to present the facts. Here's this person, here's how they've answered the vetting questions. We provide a batch to the hiring business and the ball's in their court in terms of who they want to run with, interview, and so on and so forth. So number 3, how can you find people that are aligned to us and our culture? So another one from the hiring business's perspective. So we work with a lot of startups and scale-ups. So a natural question we might get asked is, how can you be sure that you're finding someone that's going to thrive in this kind of environment, that's fit for a startup environment, that's fit for our culture and everything that comes with that? So this is one of those questions that I could write a dissertation on. It's obviously not an exact science. We have recruited for a lot of smaller businesses over the years, so I like to think we've become quite adept at tuning into whether or not someone is ultimately going to thrive in that kind of environment. A couple of things I'd say, you can't drag somebody through a process if immediately it doesn't feel like it's registering with them, or if immediately the candidate is quibbling about things that might indicate they're not fit for a startup environment. What exactly the working hours, what exactly the breaks, etc. If they're giving enough signs that they probably need more structure than a startup can offer, that normally comes through pretty early in the conversation. So my view is very much, let's not drag those people through the whole process. We'll rule those out quite quickly, and then we'll try and find those that are more in line with what we're looking for. What might surprise people actually is that most of the work that I do with any given candidate, most of the conversations that I have with any candidate ultimately lead towards us not putting them forwards for the position. So for every 5 we put in front of you, we might have ruled out 100 others. So we're quite happy to rule out those people who obviously aren't going to fit. Now that might answer the question of how do we rule a lot of people out. It doesn't really answer the question as to how do we actually get to those that are aligned. So we would look to agree with you the values, the traits, etc. that you specifically want us to vet against. We would work together then to define what kind of questions we could ask of somebody to get to the core of those. We would provide you with an insight as to how candidates have answered those at the point of putting them forwards. We've got a free values calculator that you could use if you're not sure yourself how to define your own values, so I'll include a link to that and give that a spin. Yeah, as I say, I could talk for hours on this topic. It's a deep one, but there are a couple of kind of high level insights. I think we're on to number 4 now. What happens if we pay you to run a search and you don't fill the role? Okay, so this question pretty much comes up every time for obvious reasons. So if you've enlisted us on a search whereby there is some kind of commitment or commencement fee in order for us to run that search, which typically would be the case if it's a niche or a hard to fill role, something that's going to involve a headhunt over a period of a number of weeks, it's a very natural question. What happens if we don't do our job? What happens if we take the money and run? A couple of ways I would answer that. So first of all, we work in quite a niche area, so we live and die by our reputation within this space. I think word would soon get round if we were just taking commencement fees and then not doing the work. I set up Anthology 6 years ago. I don't think I'd be sitting here with a business still if we operated in that way. Moving further on from that, I guess part of the question here is how can you guarantee you're going to fill the job? So the simple answer to that is we can't. We can never provide that guarantee. It relies on too many things that are out of our hands. It relies on you actually making an offer to a candidate. If it's exceptionally niche, let's say there's one perfect person out there, it relies on them being interested in the job, actually accepting an offer. So there are some guarantees we can make. So we guarantee and we commit ourselves to covering the entire market. You can hold us accountable because a part of our process, we recommend weekly steering meetings, so you can actually see the ground that we're covering. You can actually see that we're targeting the right kinds of people. So by the time that batch of shortlisted people lands on your desk, you've already got a pretty good idea running up to that of the kinds of people we're going to be putting forwards. And you've already given your input as to whether they look about right or not. So generally, one of two things will happen. In 80 to 90% of cases, we get to the ideal kind of people that you're looking for. That results in a successful hire. In the other 10 to 20%, so the minority of cases, we might find that actually we can't get to that perfect person. Maybe they don't exist or they're not available at this point in time. So what you'll get at the very least at the end of a search is the full market map, the 100 or so people that we've approached. You will be able to see who the best person that's possibly available at that moment in time is. This should be the final one. I think this is number 5. Salary expectations. We've already had that one. AI is starting to let me down now. Right, okay, so last question that I'm gonna cover today. Have you got people in your network for this? Again, a perfectly natural question. A hiring business comes to us, they've got a need, they want to know if we know people who might be right for that job. So I'm an advocate for not just relying on people who are in our networks. I'm a little bit anti the whole approach of, yeah, we know 10 people for this, you just leave it with me, I'll come back to you in a couple of days. I think in some cases that might work, but in those cases where you need full market coverage or where you want to be confident that you're getting the best possible person out there, think about how many stars have to align for that person to be already in our network and somebody that we've spoken to in recent times. They need to be the perfect fit for the role. They need to be within budget. They need to be looking right now. It happens every now and again, but 80 to 90% of roles that we fill are through the search process. And through that search, we will bring to you the results of that search. That will be a combination of both people that we've found afresh that we didn't know before, plus if we feel they're relevant, people that were in our network that tick the boxes, but we're not going to crowbar somebody in if they're not quite right. I think any search that relies on just a network is going to naturally hit a wall at some point. It's by definition a limited search. So yes, we'll search on network, but we'll go far beyond that as well. In other words, we're never going to be that agency that promises you, yeah, we know 10 people for this, we'll bring them to you tomorrow. I think really we're not doing our jobs properly if we do that. So in summary, yes, we might, but we are going to go beyond that as well for our search. So I've covered that 5 today. Obviously there are tons more. I'll probably do another one of these another day and we'll go through some more. And you've got any questions on watching this that I've not covered that you'd like clarification on, feel free to hit me with them and we can incorporate them into the next one.